Temples are back in Zelda, making a triumphant return in Tears of the Kingdom. While they don't fully commit to the old Zelda formula, which is probably for the best, they still do bring with them the experience many fans missed in Breath of the Wild. With 5 temples spread across this new Hyrule, it's only natural that we need to rank them all in order of their greatness. Of course, that also means that this video will have spoilers for the entire main game, with exception to the literal final boss. Do not spoil the game for yourself. You've been warned. Now for the criteria. First, these rankings are obviously all my opinion, but to go further into detail for why I ranked certain dungeons over others, I've created multiple categories that each temple will have a rank for. These categories include the Companion, ranking how interesting of an ally you are joined with on your quest to the temple. The Story. This includes the compellingness of the disaster that the temple has inflicted on its region, the info we learn about the greater story of the game, as well as any lore tidbits we receive along the way. Getting to it. This category is all about how entertaining the obstacles we face on the way to the temple are, including but not limited to mini-bosses, scripted sequences, and of course the actual journey to the temple. The temple itself. Obviously, this is by far the most important category. While the quality of puzzles is the main factor that decides each temple's rank in this section, the overall motif of the dungeon, enemy variety, and traversal around it are all considered. The boss. Does it inspire fear into the player as it's finally revealed, or does it become a complete pushover once you start the fight? The music. This category doesn't just include the main escalating theme that grows in size as you complete the temple, but also the companion's theme, the boss theme, and any other notable ones relating to the dungeon's experience. And lastly, the ability, coming in the form of a vow from the new temple sage, ranked both on its utility as well as the sage's use in combat. Now, as there are 5 temples total, all 5 will have each of these aspects ranked on a scale of 1 being the best to 5 being the weakest. So, without further ado, let's start our rankings of all the temples in Tears of the Kingdom. Number 5. The Fire Temple. Before you start feeling the burn, know that this isn't because the Fire Temple is bad by any means, but rather because the competition is so full of diamonds. They're all amazing, but one of them had to take the heat and end up in last. The Flame Temple stands firm as a rock, displaying a solid performance in just about every category. Its only weakness is that it doesn't excel in any particular one either, which ended up being the main factor that got it here. But regardless of its ranking, let's start off with some of its better qualities. The Companion. I'll be completely honest and admit that Yunobo was by far my least favorite companion in Breath of the Wild, but I'm also happy to say that I enjoyed him much more in this game, bumping him up multiple spots. At first, I plenty enjoyed his new evil side, corrupting his own people for profit. It was quite an unexpected side of him, even if it was all revealed to be mind control. Despite that, even when he does revert back to normal, he's much less of a wimp than in the last game, making him plenty enjoyable as your ally. Despite that, there are still others that I'd prefer to adventure with, so in third place he remains. The Story. It starts strong with the kind and jolly go-on people we've all grown accustomed to in a zombie-like trance, all craving this new stone Yunobo-ko has them hooked on like some addicting drug. They all act kind enough to not be your enemy, but disillusioned enough to be by no means your ally. As I mentioned earlier, seeing Boss Yunobo was also a treat, but the best part was getting to see Zelda take a much more active role in this temple. While in the other stories, we only really ever hear of her poking around, potentially influencing different disasters, in this temple, we see her objectively doing some fucked up shit. The intensity of the story loses some points for the disaster level threat that the Demon King came up with, essentially being to turn Goons into a bunch of meth heads, but even with that, it's still pretty good. Getting to it. In my humble opinion, it's the journey to the Temple of Fire that is the peak of the whole experience. The minecarts are always a fun way to move around, but more than that, there are so many unique aspects that just make getting to the main objective a blast. First, we have the boss fight with Yunobo. While it may be a walk in the park and only lasts a minute, a unique boss fight still counts for something, right? Then we have the siege on the volcano itself, allowing me to live out my dream of being a tactical air bomber. While my fantasy is cut short by how quick the segment is, it is still plenty enjoyable while it lasts. Even the walk in the dark on the way to the temple is made incredibly cool by the ominous lighting of a greater structure far in the distance, surrounded by cooling lava as it awaits your arrival. The temple. Now for the temple itself, I rank it at another respectable 3rd out of 5. By far the best part of this temple is the fact that it actually feels like a temple. This may seem like an odd thing to say, but some of the other dungeons on this list feel a lot more like static divine beasts, whereas this monument hidden within the earth really feels like an ancient temple long buried within the depths of a supermassive volcano. The minecarts make a welcome return, allowing for high speed and engaging travel across the temple. My only complaint about them, as well as the temple as a whole, is that figuring out their complicated paths and how to manipulate them seem to be used as an excuse to make the actual puzzles in the dungeon practically non-existent. And if you ignored the railroads altogether and found another way to get around, well, I guess you don't need any puzzles at all. The boss. Here we arrive at the not-so-great turning point for the fire dungeon, and face off against the worst boss in the game, Marbled Goma. His messy design already isn't a great start, but it just goes downhill once you begin the fight. Tears of the Kingdom as a whole has made a shift back from Breath of the Wild, returning to weak point bosses rather than back and forth fights. And while it can work, as we'll see with some later bosses, this is not one of those cases. His weak spot is so exploitable that he spent far more time in his waiting to get hit phase than he actually did attacking me. It only gets worse in the second phase when he only takes a single hit to be stunned. Yeah, not the best fight. The music. All the categories are plenty stacked, but out of all of them, I would say music has the toughest competition, and is why I have to put the Fire Temple in 4th out of 5. I never particularly loved the whole Goron style of song in general, and the dungeon's theme takes a while before it even starts resembling music. That being said, once you are nearing the end and Daruk's theme starts peeking in, it is great to listen to. And even the boss theme isn't half bad. In the end, it's Yunobo's theme that really impressed me, with the main course really getting me going. Unfortunately, it takes much more than just one great song to beat the other dungeons on this list. The ability. Solidifying this temple's place as last in the pack, we have the ability and ally you gain at the end of the temple, the Vow of Yunobo. Another stat category to be sure, with each ability having a substantial amount of uses. Yunobo's lets you shoot him out in any direction, dealing damage and starting fires along the way. It's a cool ability, but is ranked last thanks to its replaceability. You could find him in the chaos of battle as he runs around, line up a shot while dealing with the finicky terrain and then fire, or you could just shoot a bomb out. Admittedly, it is pretty fun on machines though. Ultimately, it was not the Fire Temple's failings that led it into 5th place, but rather its competition's success. While it did do well holding its own, surrounded by greatness, the Fire Temple fails to reach any higher in my rankings. So let's move on to number 4. Number 4. The Wind Temple. Ironically enough, the Wind Temple is pretty much the complete opposite of its fiery counterpart. While it doesn't do too well in the getting there category, nor in the dungeon department, fear not, for it spreads its wings and soars high in the other brackets, having a great story, stellar music, and the best ability in the game. So, without further ado, let's skydive down into the Wind Temple. The Companion. Tulin serves as our trusty companion on this quest, and I'm left wishing it was his father instead. Or the newsbird, that would have been funny. I don't have anything in particular against the small guy, but child characters are so hard to do well, and the little character development he goes through happens in about 5 seconds before we even get to the dungeon, putting Tulin just a bit ahead of last place. The story. I love the motif of this temple's story, as well as the almost existential apocalypse that it brings upon the region. The slow theme of Rito Village struggling to make it through the thick snow enveloping this town in a freezing cold. It's all done amazingly. Unfortunately, we spend little time soaking in this despairing atmosphere to instead go search for the cocky kid who quickly becomes our companion, a quest I found a lot less interesting. Getting to it. While I enjoyed the journey to the temple, it's another very stacked category, pushing the Wind Temple out into last place. Its best aspect is the motif of these ancient battleships circling a fabled storm, which is pretty damn cool. But the gameplay dabbled between enjoyable enough as you glide between floating structures, to incredibly annoying as you question where the hell you're supposed to be climbing to. The Temple. Unfortunately, the temple itself takes another last place. Again, the motif is plenty cool. Not too temple-like, but being in the middle of a supermassive cyclone with ancient Viking ships flying around isn't really something I can complain about. What really brings it down is the fact that I instantly knew what to do for every single puzzle. The entire temple took me a whopping 20 minutes to get to the boss fight. Which, I mean, damn, that must be so disappointing for the ancient sage who has spent half a millennium waiting for the successor, just for them to pass by in a few minutes. The boss. The boss of this temple is unfortunately all too similar to the Marbled Goma, and in my opinion, suffers heavily from the whole weak point theme that previous Zelda games have had. Again, it's something that has come back in this game, and I personally don't think they nailed it. It'd maybe work if the weak points were harder to get to, but as it is, it's nearly instant, and means the boss is taken out in seconds. In terms of the fight itself, it's pretty on par with the Marbled Goma, but the phenomenal atmosphere, stellar design, contagiously energetic music, and the fact that you can use your body as a fucking monster-piercing missile bumps it up, putting this boss at 4th place out of 5. The music. Here is where the Rito Temple shines, coming first out of all 5 for the incredibly stacked music category. It starts incredibly strong with a disheartening new version of the Rito Village theme, emphasizing just how crucial your mission is, with Tulin's uplifting theme being a small beam of light in the otherwise hopeless situation. Then, the foreboding piano keys as you approach the swirling storm, using hints of the tune from Attack on Valmeadow while still incorporating its own theme. As the dungeon nears completion, Revali's old melody takes center stage and urges the player to continue on until they complete their destined task. And of course we can't forget about the balls off the wall insane boss theme, with a ridiculous amount of different parts, each somehow topping the last with energy and intensity. It is insane. At this point, I'm honestly just trying to stretch this out so I can play the theme for even a bit longer, because holy Christ, it is so good. The ability. Finishing off strong, the Wind Temple also awards you with the best ability in the game, Tulin's Vow. Its main power is just Revali's Gale if it was twisted 90 degrees so that it blasts you forwards instead of upwards. In a game themed around the sky, it's only natural that an ability that gives you substantially more air mobility is going to be at the top of the list. Tulin is also the most powerful ally in combat, consistently headshotting enemies, which fully disables most for more than long enough for Link to come and clean them up. While certain aspects of the Wind Temple are the best in the game, its lack of consistency in the other categories hold it back from breaking into the top 3. Number 3, the Water Temple. Diving straight into the top 3, we have the Water Temple, ironically ranked so high thanks to its prominent lack of underwater segments. The flow between its mechanics, gameplay, and music is one that should by all means be praised, although its focus can often be muddied when trying to adhere to Zelda tradition. With that being said, let us now plunge into the first category to see how it fares. The Companion. The Water Temple starts off with a character that never fails to wash a wave of joy over my face, the one and only Prince Sidon. I mean, come on, Sidon already has the added benefit of being the best character in the last game, and now we see him having developed into a responsible leader, more than willing to sacrifice himself for his kingdom. And those washboard abs, I mean, damn, I don't like men or anything, but if Sidon flashed that smile at me, I might just, moving on. The story. Starring the chivalrous prince, it's only logical that the story follows close behind at second place. Sidon's arc is marvelously done. Brought down by the responsibilities of princehood, he has lost some of the innocence he had when we first met him in Breath of the Wild. It's only once Link arrives, reminding Sidon of their past adventures, combined with the support of his new fiancée, that Sidon can finally put his stress behind him and smile once more. The only complaint I have for the story is about the danger they face. Mud. I realize that for their water society it's plenty dangerous, but it's definitely one of the least intimidating threats. Getting to it. Unfortunately, getting to the temple is a lot of running around and doing random stuff. Sidon is tied up cleaning the water, so we don't even get to do it with him. The main thing that bumps it over the Wind Temple is the low gravity mechanic it introduces on the walk up. Combine that mechanic with some platforming and waterfall jumping, the last stretch before arriving at the temple is quite enjoyable, just not quite enough to break it into the top 3. The Temple. It's the failings of the temple itself that keep the overall experience of the Water Temple from being bumped up to second or even first on this list. Not only did it take me even less time to beat than the Wind Temple at a short few 17 minutes, most of the puzzle concepts in the dungeon had already been used one for one in the shrines leading up to it, not having been expanded on in any meaningful way. Sidon's confused AI also made a few puzzles way harder than they needed to be. Lastly, this dungeon suffers similarly to the Wind Temple, as they both feel less like ancient temples and more like divine beasts without any of the controls or innate coolness of, being a divine beast. That being said, the fun of jumping around in low gravity was enough to bump it just barely over the Wind Temple. Now for the boss, the almighty, all-knowing Mak'tu'ak. I'll be completely honest and say that while I love the designs of the temple bosses in Tears of the Kingdom, most of them kinda suck. Their general lacklusterness being the only reason that the Mak'tu'ak is able to come anywhere near first place. Don't get me wrong, I love the idea of the boss. Its mud design looks amazing, its attacks are unique, and it even finds a way to make the weak point phase engaging by forcing you to chase down the helpless runt before beating him to a pulp. But my main complaint lies in just how easy it is to get to that weak phase, taking a single amped up hit and then having so little health as you chop him up. This is a theme that, unfortunately, all the other bosses suffer from, bringing their clashes closer to a beatdown than an actual fight. But enough with the negatives, let's get back to the best category, the music, with the Water Temple just barely falling out of first place to the Wind Temple. Sidon's theme has somehow been improved from the last game, now with a more rhythmic chant after the initial chorus, giving a much more mature and princely vibe to the soon-to-be king. Then the main dungeon theme, starting slow but growing, swelling in size until the original song of Attack on Varuda overflows, closing out the dungeon with a flow of emotions to ready the player for the upcoming boss. The only reason the Wind Temple came out on top in this category is thanks to the difference in boss theme. While the erratic tune the Water Temple plays certainly fits the sporadic Muktarok, it definitely doesn't carry the same legendary feel as the Colgera. The ability. The ability was another close category, but at the other end of the spectrum, with Sidon's Vow coming last in the pack. A temporary shield that can be turned into an attack certainly looks cool, but in practice, you'll often get hit just trying to activate it, and even if you do, the shield doesn't last particularly long, and the attack does more knockback than damage. The ranking of the Water Temple is probably where my bias shows the most, because, come on. But even without said temptations, I truly believe that this temple deserves the rank it's been given. Number 2. The Spirit Temple. Now, as we enter the final two, know that I struggled with deciding which temple should be put over the other, even more than I did with the Wind and Water ones. But in the end, it's the Spirit Temple that I have to put into second. While I respect its courage to try a different formula from the rest of its fellow sanctuaries, in the end, it's the things that it decided to not include that spirited it away from first into a close second place. The Companion. One of these things it omitted to its own detriment was a companion, only really getting to meet the guardian of the temple, Minoru, once you've completed the majority of the dungeon. I do realize that we get to know her a bit better from memories you can access from throughout the world, but I can't really count that as being part of the temple. And so the Spirit Temple starts off with an unfortunate last place right off the bat. Luckily, this means it's only uphill from here. Namely, the story that I'm putting at an easy first. Wielding both quantity and quality, the Spirit Temple blasts the competition away before it's even begun, revealing that the princess we had been following all along had been nothing more than Ganondorf's puppet. That may not be the most surprising reveal considering what she's been up to, but even so. We then get to meet Taro, the Zonai fanatic, and learn more about the Zonai as a whole. This is also the only temple where we really learn more about the larger story, or at least more than the same copy-paste cutscene that is shown in every other dungeon. It explains what happened after Rauru sealed himself and the Demon King away, as well as answering the mystery that has plagued us throughout all the other temples. Why the real Zelda has disappeared, and where is she gone? Getting to it. The adventure to the temple is slightly less unique than the other qualities, but still holds up well enough, putting it right in the middle at third. Investigating old Zonai ruins, finding a way to the new Sky Island, and even the journey you're forced to make through the depths after the temple on your way to the boss. They're all fun, but none of them are outstanding, so in the middle it goes. The Temple. The deeper story we get from the Spirit Temple was one of two things that got it all the way to second place. The other thing carrying it was the dungeon itself. Not only does it surpass every other temple in really feeling like a long abandoned yet still futuristic place, it actually has challenging puzzles. There were multiple that had me stuck scratching my head, and for others, well, I don't think I even came close to the intended solution. The lack of interconnectedness between all the areas may be a bit annoying, but it was all made worth it on the ride back with whatever random block you had just collected, totaling to a dungeon experience that can't be beat by any of the other temples in the game. Until the DLC comes out. The boss. The boss of this temple is a pretty gimmicky one. Fighting the seized construct with some mech-on-mech action would have been quite enjoyable, but it's let down by a lack of interesting mechanics. None of its attacks are all too tough to avoid, and the combo of a shocker and a club made this fight a trivial matter. Overall, it comes off as a cool one-off concept that could have used a bit more depth to really make it engaging. The music. Yeah, I don't have too much to say for the music category. The temple theme is kinda just there in the back, and the boss theme, while admittedly quite enjoyable, can't compete by itself against any of the other temples. The ability. Lastly, the Vow of Minoru, a personal mecha to ride around at your leisure. It looks like it should be incredibly powerful, but instead it's disappointingly weak. While riding it certainly looks fun, it is impossible to fight in. I mean, you hit for almost nothing while having your hitbox quintupled in size. Although it does have a decent amount of use as a separate fighter, able to use elemental attacks and yeet normal enemies across the battlefield, landing this ability at a comfortable 3rd place. While the Spirit Temple may not excel in every category, it hits hard in 2 of the most important ones, securing its place near the top. But its failure to compete in the other categories is what led this next temple to 1st place. Number 1. The Lightning Temple. It may be shocking to some, but it's none other than the Lightning Temple that charges its way into 1st place. I sure do hope my bias isn't showing, because Varnaboras was my favorite divine beast as well, but perhaps lightning truly can strike twice. While it's easy to get lost in the excellence of the other dungeons, I can assure you that they appear as little more than insects in a storm when compared, as it is the Lightning Temple that rises above the rest, leaving the competition stunned in its electrifying wake. The Companion. For our companion, the very queen of the warrior woman joins our side, only being beaten out by the slightly more attractive Zorn Prince. She may be small in stature, but she makes up for it with her commanding loyalty, prowess in battle, wonderful physique, and, sorry, what? I mean, hey, at the end of the day, what can I say? I have a bit of a weakness for strong women. It's a big weakness. The story. Now for the only category the Lightning Temple fails to exceed my expectations in, coming last in the story. After seeing the desolate town of the Gerudo, I was hoping that it was the signs of a large-scale war between them and the Yiga, but was sorely disappointed. Don't get me wrong, the Gyptos and their Insect Queen are plenty interesting and lead to some great action sequences, but I can't really include that in the story category. Riju doesn't go through any character arc, nor do we get a very interesting explanation for the underground pyramid's existence. The disaster they face still gives quite a powerful atmosphere of dread, as even the fiercest warriors in the land are forced to retreat. But it loses massive points for not letting me wear my perfectly respectable Sheikah mask within their town, keeping them in 5th. Getting to it. As we already started to cover in the previous section, the lead up to the temple is chock full of intrigue and action, easily landing itself in first. It starts off strong, introducing a creepy new enemy seemingly invulnerable to all attacks. Then a literal siege-style attack on the town itself, as you're left to run around defending different fronts of the town as these monstrosities break their way through the defenses. The excitement continues till the very moment the temple begins. Even as you've entered the dungeon, approaching the center, you get to face off against multiple Indiana Jones style traps, all combining to make it a super fun experience. But we're only getting started. The Temple. While the temple itself fails to reach the same difficulty as the Spirit Temple, it does well to make up for it with its much more interesting theme, giving ancient pyramid vibes while still incorporating the futuristic side of the Zonai. I also love how all the puzzle rooms are connected by a single source of light that you have to control from the top of the pyramid, giving the whole place a greater sense of interconnectedness that the other temples lacked. The only complaint I have is the same as the one I had for the Fire Temple, where once you actually figure out how to get where you need to go, the actual puzzle waiting for you is pretty easy. The Boss. Topping off the podium with another first, this temple continues to boast its excellence with its boss fight. Her design is great, her attacks unique, and even her weak point isn't nearly as exploitable as the other bosses. Now, these are all great qualities, but what really helps this creature-breeding beast stand above the rest is the fact that it was split into two separate battles. You fight her once right as you are about to enter the temple, and again at the end as a proper final boss. While this may seem like it would lead to repetition, hindering the full impact of the final fight, what this really does is allow the developers to create a good, mildly challenging boss fight with the initial battle, and then knowing that the player will already have faced the queen once, they can expand on the fight for the final battle, significantly growing its complexity and difficulty, making for an awesome challenge as you run around, avoiding the demons she spawns as you take out the surrounding spawners. Her hitboxes are unclear and her attacks aren't always perfectly telegraphed, but thanks to the unique approach the developers took with her, the Queen of the Gibdos manages to rise well above the other temple bosses with ease. The music. The music that trails you throughout your journey in the desert is by no means a slouch, but the top two contenders in this category are so powerful that the Lightning Temple was forced out into third. That being said, I've always loved the unique style of song that the Gerudo are often accompanied by. The temple theme brings back memories of Urbosa and the legendary assault on Vanaboras. Riju's theme is perfect for the powerful leader that she is, and the boss theme delivers a potent rush at the climax of battle. Like I said, it's a great group of tracks, just not enough to compare with the top two. The ability. The Queen of the Gerudo doesn't disappoint with her powerful vow, allowing you to shoot powerful AoE arrows at foes within an ever-expanding range. While it can't compare to Urbosa's Fury, you can use it ridiculously frequently. Compared to Unibo's, which has a pretty similar use, Riju's has more flexibility, verticality, and power, making it undoubtedly the best offensive ability in the game. While it doesn't come first in every category, it's the Lightning Temples consistently to reach the upper ranks that helped it reach first place in my rankings. Again, these are all my own opinions, so feel free to disagree. Wait! Before you leave! How could I have forgotten to rank the most important aspect of all? The totally not at all creepy "come to me" phrase every single sage first introduces themselves with, for which each time Link acts equally shocked. Number 5, the Spirit Sage.
You must hurry. We must meet as soon as possible.
This one is terrible, an indisputable last place. No sense of urgency, no compelling reason for us to continue on, and no sexual innuendo. Worst one by far. Number 4, the Wind Sage.
Come to me.
Amazing. Now this is what I'm talking about. Just absolutely laying down the line on his need for us to just come. Number 3, the Water Sage.
Yes,
to me.
I mean, this one just spells everything out so well. It's clear as glass that we need to come here, like come to her, like just like come. Number 2, the Fire Sage.
Come. Come. To me.
This guy honestly sounds like he's questioning his decision to ask us to come, but he gets bonus points because it's kind of funny. And in first place once again, the Lightning Sage.
Come. Come. To where I am.
Oh my god, it is perfect. This dominant style of coming is why I love Gerudo Woman so much. Pause. Now that we got the true final rankings out of the way, thanks for watching. I am beyond shocked that anyone has lasted this far in the video, but if you have, consider subscribing, for I have much more Tears of the Kingdom content on its way. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.